The Galactic Federation's Grand Hall was a monument to arrogance. Towering spires of light and sound filled the chamber, each representing a species that had long since mastered the stars. At the center of the room, a holographic projection of Earth spun lazily, its blue and green hues a stark contrast to the cold, metallic surroundings. Admiral Vrax of the Krythar Dominion stood at the podium, his voice dripping with disdain. "Look at them," he sneered, gesturing to the projection. "A species that still relies on chemical explosions to reach orbit. They hurl metal fragments at each other like savages. And their so-called technology? A joke. They cannot even harness the most basic principles of quantum energy. They are pitiful. Unworthy of the stars." The chamber erupted in laughter. Representatives from a dozen species nodded in agreement, their voices blending into a chorus of mockery. The Zenthari, a race of crystalline beings, chimed in with a melodic but cutting remark. "They are not even a Type 1 civilization. Why should we waste resources on their annexation? They offer nothing." Vrax's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Precisely. They are weak. But their planet is rich in resources, and their population, expendable. We will take Earth, and they will serve us. If they resist, we will crush them like the insects they are." The vote was unanimous. Earth would be annexed, and humanity would be brought to heel. The Federation's fleet, 100 ships strong, was dispatched to the Sol system. They expected no resistance. They expected no fight. They expected humanity to kneel. On Earth, the mood was anything but submissive. Deep beneath the surface, in a bunker hidden from prying eyes, General Carter stood before a council of humanity's brightest minds. The room was tense, the air thick with anticipation. A holographic display showed the Federation fleet's trajectory, their ships closing in on Earth with terrifying speed. "They're coming," Carter said, his voice steady. "And they think we're defenseless. They think we're weak. But we've been preparing for this moment for decades. Dr. Reyes, show them." Dr. Elena Reyes stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she activated the display. A swirling vortex of light and darkness appeared, a micro black hole contained within a magnetic field. "This," she said, "is the culmination of our work. Quantum singularity technology. A weapon that can tear through anything, shields, hulls, even time itself. We've weaponized the fabric of the universe." The room fell silent. Carter's eyes gleamed with determination. "The Federation thinks they're invincible. They think we're nothing. But we're going to show them just how wrong they are. We're going to hit them with everything we've got. And we're going to do it in 300 seconds. The Federation fleet arrived in the Sol system with the confidence of a predator stalking its prey. Admiral Vrax's flagship, the Eclipse, led the armada, its sleek hull gleaming in the light of the distant sun. He stood on the bridge, his mandibles twitching in amusement as he watched Earth grow larger on the view screen. "Open a channel to the planet," he ordered. "Let's give them one last chance to surrender." The transmission was broadcast across Earth, Vrax's voice echoing in every corner of the globe. "People of Earth," he began, his tone dripping with condescension. "You have been judged by the Galactic Federation and found wanting. Your technology is primitive, your species weak. You have 300 seconds to surrender. If you resist, you will be annihilated." The response came not from Earth's leaders, but from General Carter himself. His face appeared on the Eclipse's view screen, his expression calm but resolute. "Admiral Vrax," he said, his voice steady, "you have 300 seconds to leave our system. If you do not, we will annihilate you." Vrax laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You dare threaten us? With what? Your pathetic rockets? Your primitive explosives? You are nothing. You are less than nothing." Carter's lips curled into a faint smile. "You'll see." The transmission ended, and Vrax shook his head in disbelief. "Humans," he muttered. "So delusional. So pitiful." The first sign that something was wrong came when the Eclipse's sensors detected an anomaly. A small, flickering distortion in space, barely noticeable at first. Then another. and another. Within seconds, the distortion grew, forming a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to devour the light around it. "What is that?" Vrax demanded, his voice tinged with unease. The sensor officer's voice trembled. I don't know, Admiral. It's some kind of gravitational anomaly. It's tearing through our shields." Before Vrax could respond, the vortex erupted, unleashing a torrent of energy that ripped through the Eclipse's hull like paper. Alarms blared, and the ship shuddered violently as entire sections were torn apart. On the view screen, Vrax watched in horror as other ships in the fleet were consumed by similar anomalies, their once proud vessels reduced to debris in moments. "Evasive maneuvers!" he shouted, but it was too late. The anomalies were everywhere, their destructive power unmatched. The Federation fleet, once invincible, was being annihilated before his eyes. On Earth, General Carter watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The singularity cannons had done their job, their micro-black holes tearing through the Federation's advanced shields and hulls with ease. The 300-second timer ticked down, and with each passing second, another Federation ship was destroyed. "They thought we were weak," Carter said, his voice low. "They thought we were pitiful. But they were wrong. And now they'll pay the price." As the timer reached zero, the last of the Federation ships was consumed by a singularity, its hull collapsing in on itself. The Sol system was silent once more, the remnants of the fleet drifting aimlessly in the void. Admiral Vrax's voice crackled over the comms, his tone no longer mocking but desperate. What are you?" he stammered. Carter leaned forward, his eyes cold. "We are humanity. And you should have never underestimated us." The transmission ended, and the room erupted in cheers. But Carter remained silent, his mind already turning to the future. The Federation would not forget this day. And neither would humanity. The Federation fleet was in chaos. Ships that had once been symbols of invincibility now burned in the void, their hulls torn apart by the relentless onslaught of humanity's singularity cannons. Admiral Vrax clung to the console of the Eclipse, his mandibles twitching in panic as the bridge shook violently. "Report!" he barked, his voice cracking under the strain. "What in the name of the stars is happening?" The sensor officer's voice was barely audible over the alarms. "Gravitational anomalies, Admiral! They're everywhere! Our shields are useless. They're tearing through our ships like they're made of paper." Vrax's eyes widened as he watched the view screen. A nearby cruiser, the Dawnstar, was caught in the grip of a swirling vortex. Its hull buckled and collapsed, the ship vanishing into the abyss. Another vortex erupted closer to the Eclipse, and Vrax felt the deck lurch beneath his feet. "Evasive maneuvers!" he shouted. "Get us out of here!" The helmsman's hands flew across the controls, but it was no use. The anomalies were too fast, too unpredictable. The Eclipse shuddered as a singularity grazed its hull, ripping away entire sections of armor. Vrax stumbled, his mind racing. How could this be happening? How could humans, pitiful, primitive humans, have such power? On Earth, General Carter watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The singularity cannons had done their job, their micro-black holes tearing through the Federation's advanced shields and hulls with ease. The 300-second timer ticked down, and with each passing second, another Federation ship was destroyed. "Status report," Carter said, his voice calm but commanding. "Fleet engagement at 87% effectiveness," a technician replied. "Enemy casualties are catastrophic. Their formation is in complete disarray." Carter nodded. "Good. Keep the pressure on. I want every last one of their ships neutralized before the timer runs out." The room buzzed with activity, technicians and officers working in perfect harmony. Dr. Reyes stood nearby, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. "It's working," she murmured, almost to herself. "The singularities are stable. They're holding." Carter glanced at her. "You sound surprised." Reyes shook her head. "Not surprised. Relieved. We've never tested this on such a scale before. There was always a chance something could go wrong. And yet, Carter said, a faint smile playing on his lips, here we are. Back on the Eclipse, Vrax was losing control. The ship's systems were failing, its hull breached in a dozen places. The bridge was filled with smoke, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning circuits. The crew was in disarray, their confidence shattered. Admiral! The comms officer shouted. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Vrax's eyes narrowed. Put it through. The viewscreen flickered, and General Carter's face appeared. He looked calm, almost bored, as if the destruction of the Federation fleet was nothing more than a routine exercise. Admiral Vrax, Carter said, his voice steady. Your fleet is defeated. Your ships are burning. You have exactly 120 seconds to surrender. If you do not, we will annihilate you. Vrax's mandibles twitched in fury. You dare threaten me? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I am Admiral Vrax of the Krythar Dominion. I will not be humiliated by a species of primitives. Carter's expression didn't change. Your arrogance is your weakness, Admiral. You underestimated us. And now you'll pay the price. The transmission ended, and Vrax slammed his fist against the console. Get me a firing solution on their command ship. I want that human obliterated. The weapons officer hesitated. Admiral, our targeting systems are offline. We can't. I don't care. Vrax roared. Find a way. On Earth, the timer reached the final minute. The Federation fleet was in ruins, their once proud armada reduced to a scattering of debris. The singularity cannons continued their relentless assault, each shot precise and devastating. Enemy casualties at 95%, the technician reported. Remaining ships are attempting to retreat. Carter shook his head. No. We end this now. Focus all firepower on the flagship. I want that admiral to see what happens when you underestimate humanity. The singularity cannons adjusted their aim, their targeting systems locking onto the Eclipse. The ship was already crippled, its hull riddled with breaches, but it was still a symbol of the Federation's arrogance. Carter wanted it destroyed. On the Eclipse, Vrax felt the ship shudder as another singularity grazed its hull. The viewscreen flickered, showing the human fleet closing in. He could see their ships now, their designs crude but effective. And at the center of their formation was the command ship, its hull bristling with weapons. Admiral, the sensor officer said, his voice trembling. They're targeting us. Vrax's mandibles clicked in frustration. Return fire! Now! We can't! The weapons officer shouted. Our systems are down! We're defenseless! Vrax stared at the viewscreen, his mind racing. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. He was Admiral Vrax, conqueror of 100 worlds. He couldn't be defeated by humans. The Eclipse shook violently as a singularity struck its hull, tearing through the ship's core. The bridge was filled with the sound of rending metal and screaming crew members. Vrax stumbled, his vision blurring as the ship began to collapse around him. On Earth, the timer reached 0. The Eclipse was gone, consumed by the singularity. The Federation fleet was no more, their ships reduced to debris. The Sol system was silent once more, the remnants of the battle drifting aimlessly in the void. Carter leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. It's done, he said quietly. Send a message to the Federation. Tell them humanity is not to be trifled with. The room erupted in cheers, but Carter remained silent. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. And he knew the Federation would not forget this day. The Galactic Federation was in disarray. News of the fleet's destruction spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the galaxy. Species that had once laughed at humanity now trembled at the thought of their power. The Krythar Dominion, once the most arrogant of the Federation's members, was humiliated. Their flagship, the Eclipse, was gone, and with it, their pride. On Earth, the mood was triumphant but cautious. General Carter stood before a council of humanity's leaders, his expression grim. The Federation is reeling, he said, his voice steady. But this isn't over. They'll regroup. They'll come back. And next time, they won't underestimate us. Dr. Reyes stepped forward, her eyes filled with determination. We need to prepare. The singularity technology worked, but it's not enough. We need to innovate. We need to stay ahead. Carter nodded. Agreed. But we also need to send a message. The Federation needs to understand that humanity is not to be trifled with. In the heart of the Galactic Federation, the Council convened in emergency session. The chamber, once a symbol of unity and strength, was now filled with tension and fear. Representatives from a dozen species argued, their voices rising in panic. How could this happen? The Zentari delegate demanded, their crystalline forms shimmering with anger. A primitive species armed with nothing but kinetic weapons destroyed an entire fleet. This is unacceptable. The Krythar representative, a shadow of their former arrogance, spoke quietly. We underestimated them. We thought they were weak. We were wrong. The chamber fell silent. The Krythar's admission was a shock, a species known for their pride, admitting fault. But the truth was undeniable. Humanity had humbled them. What do we do now? The Zentari asked. Do we continue the fight? Or do we negotiate? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Negotiate with humans? The idea was unthinkable. And yet, the alternative was unthinkable as well. On Earth, Carter received a transmission from the Federation. The message was brief and to the point, a request for a ceasefire and negotiations. Carter read it aloud to his council, his voice tinged with skepticism. They want to talk, he said. They want peace. Dr. Reyes frowned. Do we trust them? Carter shook his head. No. But we'll hear them out. We'll make them understand that humanity is not to be underestimated. The negotiations were held in neutral space, aboard a Federation vessel. Carter led the human delegation, his presence commanding respect. The Federation's representatives, a mix of species, watched him warily. The Krythar delegate, a replacement for Admiral Vrax, spoke first. General Carter, the Krythar said, their voice careful. We acknowledge your strength. Your victory was impressive. Carter raised an eyebrow. Impressive? Is that what you call it? We destroyed your fleet in 300 seconds. I'd call it a statement. The Krythar flinched but nodded. A statement then. But we must move forward. The galaxy cannot afford further conflict. Carter leaned forward, his eyes cold. Then here are our terms. Humanity will not be subjugated. We will not be controlled. We will join the Federation as equals, or we will stand apart. But if you ever threaten us again, we will not hesitate to defend ourselves. The Federation delegates exchanged uneasy glances. The Zentari spoke next. Your terms are reasonable. But we must ask, how did you achieve such power? Your technology was primitive. How did you develop these weapons? Carter smiled faintly. You underestimated us. You saw our weaknesses and ignored our strengths. That was your mistake. We are innovators. We are survivors. And we will not be underestimated again. The negotiations ended with a tentative agreement. Humanity would join the Federation as an equal member, their sovereignty respected. The Federation, still reeling from their defeat, had no choice but to accept. But the tension remained. The galaxy had changed, and no one knew what the future would hold. On Earth, Carter stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The celebrations were still ongoing, the streets filled with cheering crowds. But Carter's mind was elsewhere. He knew the Federation's submission was only temporary. They would regroup. They would innovate. And they would come back. Dr. Reyes joined him, her expression thoughtful. You're worried, she said. Carter nodded. This isn't over. The Federation won't forget this. And neither should we. Reyes smiled faintly. Then we'll keep innovating. We'll keep pushing. We'll stay ahead. Carter turned to her, his eyes filled with determination. We have to. Because if we don't, they'll come for us again. And next time, they won't underestimate us. In the depths of space, the remnants of the Federation fleet drifted aimlessly. The battle had been a turning point, a moment that would be remembered for generations. Humanity had proven their strength, their resilience, their ingenuity. They had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. But the galaxy was vast, and the future was uncertain. The Federation would regroup. New threats would emerge. And humanity would have to be ready. For now, though, they had won. And that was enough. The galaxy had changed. Humanity's victory over the Federation was no longer just a story, it was a legend. The 302nd War had become a symbol of humanity's resilience, a reminder that even the smallest, most underestimated species could rise to greatness. But legends fade, and symbols lose their meaning. For humanity, the real challenge was just beginning. On Earth, General Carter stood before a gathering of the world's leaders. The mood was somber, the weight of responsibility heavy in the air. "We've won the battle," Carter said, his voice steady. "But the war is far from over. The Federation may have backed down, but they haven't forgotten. And neither should we." Dr. Reyes stepped forward, her eyes filled with determination. "We need to keep pushing. The singularity technology was just the beginning. We need to innovate to stay ahead. If we don't, they'll catch up. And next time, they won't underestimate us." The leaders nodded, their expressions grim. They understood the stakes. Humanity's survival depended on their ability to adapt, to evolve. And they were ready. In the heart of the Galactic Federation, the Council convened once more. The chamber was quieter now, the arrogance of the past replaced by a cautious respect. The Krythar delegate, still reeling from their humiliation, spoke first. "We cannot ignore what happened," they said, their voice careful. "Humanity is not the primitive species we believed them to be. They are formidable. And they will not be controlled." The Zenthari delegate nodded, their crystalline forms shimmering with unease. "We must adapt. If we do not, we risk losing our place in the galaxy. We cannot afford another defeat." The Council fell silent, the weight of their failure heavy in the air. For the first time in their history, the Federation was forced to confront the possibility that they were not invincible. And that realization was terrifying. On Earth, Carter and Reyes stood in a laboratory, surrounded by the latest advancements in human technology. The singularity cannons had been refined, their power even greater than before. But that was just the beginning. "We've made progress," Reyes said, her voice filled with pride. "The new prototypes are ready. They're faster, more efficient, more powerful. But we need to think bigger. We need to think beyond weapons." Carter nodded. "Agreed. We need to expand. We need to explore. The galaxy is vast, and we've only scratched the surface. If we're going to survive, we need to understand it." The two of them stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their responsibility heavy on their shoulders. They knew the road ahead would be difficult. But they also knew they had no choice. In the depths of space, a new threat was emerging. The Federation's defeat had not gone unnoticed. Other species, once content to remain in the shadows, were now watching humanity with interest. Some saw them as allies. Others saw them as prey. On a distant planet, far from the reach of the Federation, a council of warlords convened. They were a brutal species, known for their ruthlessness and their hunger for conquest. And they had set their sights on Earth. "Humanity is strong," their leader said, his voice a low growl. "But they are also vulnerable. They have made enemies. And where there are enemies, there is opportunity." The warlords nodded, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. They had no interest in diplomacy, no desire for peace. They saw humanity as a challenge, a prize to be conquered. And they were ready to strike. On Earth, Carter received a transmission from the edge of known space. The message was brief and to the point, a warning. A new threat was coming, one that even the Federation feared. And humanity was their target. Carter read the message aloud to his council, his voice steady but grim. "We've been warned. A new enemy is coming. They're stronger than the Federation, more ruthless. And they're coming for us. The room fell silent, the weight of the news heavy in the air. But Carter's expression didn't change. He had faced impossible odds before. And he was ready to face them again. "We'll be ready," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll meet them head on. And we'll show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." In the years that followed, humanity prepared. The Singularity technology was refined, new weapons developed, new strategies devised. But more than that, humanity evolved. They became more than just a species, they became a force. A symbol of resilience, of ingenuity, of hope. The warlords came, as they had promised. But they were met with a humanity that was ready, a humanity that had learned from its past and was prepared for its future. The battle was fierce, the cost high. But in the end, humanity prevailed. And as the dust settled, as the galaxy watched in awe, one thing became clear: humanity was no longer the pitiful species they had once been. They were something more. Something greater. In the end, it wasn't the weapons that defined humanity. It wasn't the technology, the strategies, the victories. It was their spirit. Their determination. Their refusal to back down, no matter the odds. And as the stars burned bright in the night sky, as humanity looked to the future with hope and determination, one thing was certain: they would never be underestimated again.